Welcome to Shalom, Ottawa. You are dialed into the show that keeps you in the know about the personalities and events across Ottawa's Jewish community, as well as with our extended family in Israel. My name is Les Com, and as your host, I've got some fresh conversation for your head and your heart, stories you won't hear anywhere else. So keep your eyes on the road or your hands wrapped around a good cup of coffee. Sit back, relax, and join me in welcoming today's special guest, Yalla. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the March episode of Shalom Ottawa. And guess what? This month, it's all about Purim. We're absolutely delighted, honored, and thrilled to have Rabbi Daniel Michaelberg of Temple, Israel, join us this morning. Good morning, Rabbi. How are you?
Good morning, Les. It's such a privilege to be with you here this morning.
Oh, fantastic. So I have to ask you right off the hop, Purim, Jews running around dressed up in funny costumes, wearing clownish masks. Is this really us? We don't do anything like this on any other holiday. What's going on here? How did this come about?
Sure. So Les, a great question, and I have two answers. So first of all, you're exactly right that Purim is all about opposites. And as we think about, for example, dressing up in costumes, making a lot of noise, engaging in drinking alcohol, it's very much we're turning the synagogue and our lives upside down, and it isn't our normal. And so that in itself really begs the question, what is this all about? And I'll speak to that in a moment, but I also want to share that this year in particular, it feels like our world is turned upside down in a variety of ways. And so even just to engage in that which we typically don't engage in, that begs the question, how does this relate to our world at large? And so now looking back to the specific question about why do we do this and what is this about, it's meant to push us in a variety of ways. And so, for example, looking at the topic of wearing a costume, the question that I like to ask, in particular for our younger friends, yes, today our costumes are silly and outrageous, sometimes obnoxious, but do we wear costumes every day? For example, are there masks that we wear, perhaps that represent how we wear our Judaism? And how do we wear them? When do we want to hide who we are? How do we take those masks off and create opportunities to share our authentic selves? And so what I'm trying to hint at here is, even as Purim is silly and outrageous, the topic is actually quite serious. And we're meant to ask these very difficult questions of the soul. And as with all of our holidays, it's not just about the specific day. These topics, these activities, these customs, they're meant to really to help us think, how do we in the everyday carry ourselves? And perhaps how can we live our lives more authentically? Some more questions, for example, about turning everything upside down. It's over Purim that we engage in a lot of laughter. It's over Purim that we sing songs and are outrageous in different ways. And so an important question, do we ever take ourselves too seriously? And so to engage in this humor and this song, it really pushes us to really think to ourselves about where are we at this moment in time, and how do we make space for joy and for laughter. And again, I want to focus us in on that topic of turning things right way up. When things are upside down, it takes conscious effort to turn things right way up. And sometimes it's that silliness that is able to center our intentions on taking our paradigm, taking our predicament, and finding the efforts to improve our circumstances.
Very interesting. I have to admit that I'm heavily into silly. I'm big on silly. I like silly. Silly likes me. And listening to your description of how we carry on during Purim, I think I'd like to stay with Purim for quite a while, even after the holiday's over.
And Les, I think there's two types of people in the world. There are the people that love to be silly. I'm going to confess, I'm actually the opposite. And it often, I have to push my comfort level to put on that Purim face. And that in itself is a good conversation about how we carry ourselves and how we go beyond our comfort zone and how we even learn from the silliness.
Going beyond our comfort zone is a very interesting theme. You know, beyond the costumes and the noise making with the groggers, of course, you know, that brings us to the book of Esther, Megillat Esther, the whole Megillah, as we like to say. That's another twist. I can't think of another holiday, Hanukkah, Rosh Hashanah, where we read, where it's our duty to read, to listen to, and hear once again the story, the book of Esther. Pesach, there's obviously a story, quite a story at Pesach, but that story is told by each of our families in our homes around the Seder table, whereas for Purim, Megillat Esther is read at shul, and we come and we listen and rattle our groggers now and then. This is another distinctive twist about Purim. How did this custom, or is it a law about reading the book of Esther, listening to it in the shul? How did that come about, and what does it mean? What does it stand for, in your opinion?
Sure. Well, Les, I'm going to push back a little bit. Really, with every one of our holidays, there's a story. But as you're highlighting, that some of these stories speak to us in different ways, and we certainly emphasize these stories in different ways. And as you're highlighting, one of the expectations is every year at Purim that we are that we're almost commanded to hear the story, to tell it once again. So there's something about the Purim story that is especially resonant to our people. Interesting to note that of all the holiday stories that we share, the Purim story is relatively modern. Now, of course, you know, that's relative speaking. The Purim story, Megillat Esther, doesn't come from Torah, and so it comes from writings that would have developed later on. And I think that speaks to the topic, in that the Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, is the ultimate story of diaspora Jewry. And so it is especially relevant and resonant as we think about how do we live our lives as Jews in a primarily non-Jewish world. And I would say that it's that phenomenon that makes this story so important. And so just to summarize for your readers, the story of Esther takes us to the times in Shushan. We're introduced to a relatively simple king, Ahasuerus. There's a wicked advisor named Haman who has the king's ear. Haman seems to seek that everybody look and conform and behave the same, and is turned off by the Jewish people, in particular Mordechai, who will not bow down to him. And then the story takes a curious tale. It's almost a Miss America pageant, in that the king cast off Vashti and now needs a new queen. We witness an opportunity. Esther could be this queen, as in perhaps a Jewish queen could serve in this role. And so we witness with Mordechai coaching Esther to take on this to enter the competition. We witness a phenomenon that we see a Jewish queen emerge. And Esther is our heroine, in that Esther finds a place in the castle, and Esther will sometimes be quite public with her role, actually not till the end. Most of the time be quite quiet with her role as a Jewish person. In the end, she's going to save the day. In the end, as Haman seeks to kill all the Jews, Esther's going to rise to the occasion and reveal herself, and they're all going to live happily ever after, unless you're wicked Haman and his family. But what I'm trying to draw attention to here is Esther is so relatable, and we witness in Esther the phenomenon of how do we live our lives as Jews? How do we engage in these very complicated questions? In particular, when do we display our Judaism, and when do we choose to be more subtle? I'll share with you that in these difficult days, conversations that I'm having more and more often is it safe for me to have a mezuzah in public, on my house? Another question I have, particularly with our students, can I wear a Magen David? Can I demonstrate who I am? To answer the question in short, I share with everybody that we ought to be proud of who we are, and there's nothing to hide from. But I also don't want to discount that these are difficult questions, and again, this notion of masking. To display who we are is oftentimes very sensitive. And so as we think about why is this story of Esther so precious, because it really speaks to the Jewish dilemma of how do we live our lives when we're a minority people, when we're surrounded by a population that is oftentimes puzzled by our unique ways. And so as we look to the story, we're really reminded to ask those questions and hopefully to find the courage and the bravery to let our true colors truly shine. I want to point out, none of the characters in the Purim story are perfect, and who is perfect? And so as we look to the Purim story and we think about why it is so present and why it is so important, it really reminds us that all of us are going to excel at certain times, and all of us are also going to struggle. Most important in those times of struggle, and that our eyes are wide open and that we're open to learning from those places where we may not have succeeded, as we really aspire to be the best that we can be. Esther is my heroine because Esther engaged in this complicated story of self and will find the pathway to never mind save herself, but also serve her people, and in doing so be a source of pride for one and all.
Well, you've turned a story that I learned as a kid at Jewish school, that I learned, that I studied, that I memorized. You've turned it into a very human story, related it to us here and now, which is very, very insightful. Let's turn a bit, and with all that in mind, let's talk about some of your own experiences. What's your first memory of Purim? What stands out for you when you think back, when you first experienced Purim, or your first big Purim memory that made an impression on you?
Sure. So let me focus us in. There are traditionally 4 mitzvot, 4 expectations that we do at Purim, and I got to share. The first one is a little bit audacious. So the first commandment of Purim is that for the entire month of Purim, for the entire month of Adar, we're commanded to be happy. I often think that when the ancient rabbis enter into the realm of dictating emotions, that has a lot of chutzpah to it. And as we all know, as we think about our emotions, and it's not the first time, for example, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not be jealous. We have to realize that the rabbis in their wisdom recognize that we don't have a switch on our forehead that we simply turn and say, now's your time to be happy, or conversely, now's your time to be sad. But the rabbis in their wisdom recognize that there are steps that we can take to help our emotions and to create an environment so that that is more conducive to the theme. And so here we are I recognize you're in California. I'm here in Ottawa. As I look out, it's freezing cold and the snow continues to be present. But I do know that as we're in March, as we're in Adar, that the spring is going to be here soon. And if we're looking in a seasonal aspect, as the winter passes, the spring comes, the flowers blossom. It is a time that we do the best that we can to increase our happiness. And again, I recognize that these are dark days and the challenges are many. And it's from that predicament that the ancient rabbis are commanding us that we need to do the best that we can to make space for joy. I'm not going to say that I don't struggle with this expectation, because of course I do. And many of our listeners may not feel like being joyful right now. But it's all the more so from this time of darkness that we need to recognize that the darkness can't overwhelm. And we need to hold on to those glimmers of light. And we need to make space for hope. And we need to make space for joy and laughter and fun. And so how beautiful that one of the 4 expectations of Purim is that we are going to do the best that we can. So in this month of Adar, the joy will increase. And you ask sort of what's most noteworthy for me, throughout my life journey, this is not the first time where Purim has arrived, and it has been a tricky time in our world at large. But I've certainly come to the place where I look forward to this Purim season and know that together with my community, whether it's eating those delicious hamantaschen, whether it's the silliness of presenting the Purim story, this year my congregation will be doing it to Beatles songs, whether it's creating a disorderly time in the synagogue filled with drink and food, we are going to make space for happiness. The other thing I'll point out is there are 3 other mitzvot. One we've already talked about at length, and that's hearing the Purim story. But there are 2 other unique mitzvahs that are very special to the Purim customs. So one is mishloach manot. And it's actually at COVID times that I discovered how beautiful mishloach manot is. Mishloach manot means to give gift baskets to our dear ones. It's over COVID time when many of us were homebound that my congregation took the lead in delivering baskets to our seniors to make sure that they felt the love. Candidly, in my household with a young child, we also received a number of gift baskets, and it was a time to recognize that even at this lonely moment, that we're going to make space for joy and love and nosh and cheer. So how beautiful! And of course, not to be left out, the 4th mitzvah of Purim is matanot le'evyonim. We make sure to give tzedakah, and we make sure that nobody slips through the cracks. And we do the best that we can to offer gifts to people who are underprivileged and people who need an extra boost. Because we recognize that as we talk about this commandment, this mitzvah of spreading the cheer, it's important that one and all feel the sense of joy.
Making space for joy, even if it takes an effort, or maybe because it takes an effort often in our history, makes a whole lot of sense. Speaking of joy and happiness and fooling around, have you ever been in a Purim spiel?
Of course, every year I'm in a Purim spiel. This year I'm going to be a Achashverosh Sergeant Pepper. As we had a Beatles theme last year. Our theme was Taylor Swift. So I look forward to my crazy character from year to year. The year before that, I got to be Ken, and Esther was Barbie, and how fun it is to act out these spiels and to bring our stories to life in creative ways.
Wonderful. What's your favorite kind of hamantaschen?
A good question. I have a sweet tooth, so I'm all about the chocolate or the jam.
Yes, that'll do it for a sweet tooth. All right. This has been a terrific conversation. You've really described and expanded certainly my understanding and awareness of Purim. You've brought me and I think our listeners way beyond the obvious part of putting on a funny costume We've loved this conversation. Thank you so much, Rabbi Michael Berg. And, good luck with your starring role in this year's Purim Spiel as Achashverosh. We know you can do it. Good luck with that. And thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Les. Hag Purim Sameach, and to all of your listeners as well.
Chag Sameach. Bye-bye. All right. So staying with the topic of Purim, we're now going to connect with our extended family in Israel, as we like to do on this podcast. So far, we've had a great discussion with Rabbi Michael Berg, who has educated us on not just the origins, but the meaning and the implications of Purim, the symbolism, the significance, the mitzvot. Now let's go to Israel and talk with our friend Danielle about how the Israelis are celebrating Purim. Danielle, welcome to Shalom, Ottawa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I understand you live near Jerusalem with your two young children. How are you going to be celebrating Purim this year?
So for us, Purim actually started yesterday, the celebrations of Purim, to be exact. At their gan, where they go, like their preschool, they have every day they need to dress up a certain way. So for instance, yesterday was color day and today was inside out day and tomorrow's pajama day. So every day is different. And then the highlight is Thursday, where they actually wear their costumes. So that's like the biggest celebration. And then Sunday, we do the Megillah reading. I'm sorry for the noises.
That's okay.
Just a minute, I'll just pick up my daughter. So on Sunday, we do the Megillah reading. And then we have like the Oznaman, which I forgot what it's called in English. I'm sorry.
Yes, hamantaschen.
Yes, and we give out the mishlochei manot, which are like these presents that we make for our friends and neighbors.
Yes. Okay. So it's an extended week of celebrations. And Thursday is costume day. So what are your kids dressing up as? Have you figured out their costumes yet?
Yeah, so we're going to have a family costume. My daughter loves mermaids, so she's going to be the little mermaid. And my younger one is going to be Flounder, which is the fish. My husband will be for Prince Charming. And then I will probably be or Sebastian the crab or Ursula the octopus.
All right. So a few fun choices there and a family costume strategy, which sounds great. Sounds like a lot of fun. So does everyone go? Does the whole family go to the school on Thursday? You all show up? You show up with your kids in costume at the school?
So no, at school, only the kids dress up. But then on Friday, we meet in the morning with friends, celebrate. And then we go as a family in our costumes.
Okay. Well, we don't want the parents to be left out. So that's good that there is some costume space for you and your husband as well. And the Megillat Esther, you mentioned that will be on Sunday. Do most people in Israel go to hear the Megillat Esther, or
I wish I could say yes, but not really. It really does depend on how religious you are. And for us, it's just like a family tradition. And others do it like in their synagogue. Some do it as part of like this Purim festival and hear the reading. Some go and hear it like in a more fun way as a play for the kids. So it really changes. But I don't want to say most. I think it's like maybe half and half, I'm assuming.
All right. And what about hamantaschen or Oznei Haman? Is that also half and half in terms of people who
So no, that's out there. We can purchase it approximately 2 weeks before Purim, it's already out in the stores. So everyone, you could put it or in the mishloach manot, like that gift that you give your friends and neighbors. Kids love
Yes.
eating it, especially the chocolate filling. And there are some people that now make it at home. There's even kind of like a TikTok trend about it of how to make the dough and how to make it with your kids.
Wow. What's not on TikTok? Amazing.
That's true.
So the whole holiday is celebrated over roughly a week, and it's a joyous, fun occasion. Unlike some of our other Jewish holidays, this is all about happiness. Or Rabbi Michaelberg was saying it's a way to push ourselves to be silly for a change and to
I was about
act
to
up.
say we push our boundaries and limits. Like the very religious people usually like allow themselves to drink and smoke. It's part of like being happy and wild, and it's not something that they necessarily do on their everyday. But it's part of being just happy.
Part of being just happy and breaking out of the ordinary.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds great. I've got to come back to hamantaschen in closing here, Danielle. You mentioned the kids love chocolate. No surprise there. What are some of the other flavors and varieties available, and what's your personal favorite?
So there's dates and poppy seeds. I think those are the three common ones. And then if you make it at home, you could make it like with caramel or lotus, like whatever filling you could actually get your hands on. They're just less traditional. Like those are the three more common ones. For me, I personally prefer the chocolate as well. It just tastes better. Anything sweet tastes better.
Absolutely, especially at a time like this, and for this holiday, sweet is wonderful. Danielle, that sounds great. Your week of celebration is underway. You've got lots to look ahead to over the next few days. Have a wonderful rest of the holiday. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We thank you very, very much. It's great to connect with you in Israel. Chag Purim Sameach.
Thank you so much. Chag Purim Sameach to you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
So, how was that for you? Did you enjoy today's show? Drop us a line and tell us. Don't hold back on your feelings. It's not healthy. While you're at it, share your ideas for future guests and topics to keep the Ottawa and Israel stories flowing. And since you're a sharing person, let your friends know about Shalom Ottawa. Don't let them miss out. Of course, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. That way, you'll be the first to know when our next episode drops. Until the next time, lehitraot and Shalom Ottawa.